There you go. Much better. Sweet. Let me get my audio tested and we'll get started. There you go. Much better. Sweet. Cool. All right. So, sorry about the delay. I don't know. Discord's being weird. I've been having this. This is like third day in a row that Discord's been weird. So, I don't know. Who knows? But we are in week 3, right? So, refresher as to what we're doing week 3, right? We're going to be doing, materials and rendering, right? This is kind of where the study like really takes place, like the studies that we did week 1. This is kind of when we apply it. I know it's been 3 weeks or 2 weeks since we've done that, but in reality, right, this is the same day or the next day or whatever it is, right? Really understand like the kind of phase that we're at. We did the sketch, or I guess we did the studies to kind of understand the topics that we're going for. There's some things here and there that were like, oh, this is kind of cool. Let me do some studies on that. I'm having trouble with armor, having trouble with, lighting or whatever, right? So we set that up. And then after that, we did the sketches and block out, right? We're really just trying to understand the shape, the composition, the understanding of like how the image just kind of sits as a whole. Materials and stuff really don't matter that much because, we're trying to figure out the block out. At this point, now we want to get into actually making the thing, look good. So let me open up my file. Oh, let me screen share on Discord as well. I haven't done that one yet. Actually, no, yeah, I am screen sharing Discord. Sweet. Week 10, or month 10. All right. Cool. Let's see that. Sweet. Everyone can see my stuff. Dope. Oops. Jesus. So this is kind of where I left off. Really not that much further from like where we were. Sorry about that. Anyway, all right. So really not that much further from like where we were, right? I didn't really want to take this that much further because at this point we want to kind of start rendering. There's some things that, we want to start setting up. There's things that, we need to kind of, I guess, get to before we render, but I didn't want to like, do too much because this is kind of where the study actually takes place, or the study information actually takes place. So if I go to my file real quick, let me open my study. Was it this one? Yeah, it was this one. All right, so we did these studies, right? Or I did these studies. And so really, I'm trying to set up like, when I did this study, right? I do want to point out something where when I did this study, I mean, I know generally speaking, I've kind of done things like this before. I haven't actually done like, armor and stuff like that too often, but I have, painted, right? So with that in mind, whenever I approached this, I did this with I started with the kind of main block out shape. I separated this out into, I think it was here, right? It was the shoulder pad and then into the shoulder essentially, or the kind of like top shoulder area to the side, to the upper arm. I separated that piece out and then I kind of created like the line art almost, but I used it as more of an occlusion pass. The deeper shadows is kind of what I was painting in whenever I started, and then that helped me get my design. And then I painted all this, all the like the interior kind of like form changes and stuff, all on like one layer, right? Because I wanted that like nice smooth transition between things, and then I just kind of cleaned it up from there and kind of pushed it. And when you zoom out a little bit, right, it kind of gets that effect that we're looking for, right? So that's what I'm doing here, right? I have a design, it's not the coolest thing in the world yet. We'll get there. We'll make it work. But I'm approaching this, right, the same way that I did whenever I first started that study, right? It's crucial that you understand that when we're doing this, approach it the same exact way, right? You want to look at your painting, the study that you did earlier, and figure out like, how does this thing work? How do I get these shapes to do what I needed to do, or get a painting quality that at the very least is like kind of interesting to you. You know what I mean? So with that, I guess process that we did earlier. That's where I'm going to get to today. That's where I'm going to start pushing those ideas, you know, start making this design hopefully cooler, and then you know, doing the things that we need to do. Cool. So sweet. With that in mind, let's get started. Today is probably a pretty chill day, you know, just a lot of like mostly talking today, like just kind of like, you know, just chatting and stuff. So if you guys have topics you want to talk about, definitely I am open to it. I do have some things I do want to talk about from, you know, just various conversations throughout the week, and you know, getting those in or just addressing some of those things, that some of the conversations that I have throughout the week. But if there's anybody that has anything they want to talk about, definitely I'd love to hear it. So something I do want to say, right, with this design, I think for me personally, I'm not very good at designing from line. You know what I mean? It sounds a little weird. But like, I mean, I could do it, you know, but it never really turns out the way I kind of want, right? There's like, me personally as a designer, I really focus on trying to get, I don't know, something like something more natural, something more like I rely on the randomness that is associated with like the way I paint, right? For those, you know, that have seen me paint, you've seen me like, you know, bash pieces and, you know, kind of like crunch things around and then clean it up from where it is, right? And I really like painting that way because it creates, for one, a consistency overall, right? Where a lot of the shapes are very I guess similar, right? The form language stays the same. The painting process is quicker, you know, an abundance of reasons, right? But then with this method that I, you know, figured out during the study, it doesn't really work like that too well, right? Because you're forced to draw at the very least the cast shadows, the occlusion shadows, and various things like that. You're technically speaking drawing the design out, right? A point in my design process that, you know, I'm not exactly, I guess not that I'm not strong at it. I'm not the strongest at it, right? Like that's not where my skill set kind of lies, essentially, right? So with that in mind, understand that this is the base, right? Like when I start my drawings, start my paintings, what I like to do is just get something on the page. Like a lot of this stuff, I'm not sure if it's going to stay this way, right? I'm not sure if this is going to be exactly the way I envision some of these things, but it's a start for now. And then once I get a good base, then you can kind of start like quote unquote photo bashing the pieces that you need, right? Because once you have that armor piece, right, something like this, oops, why did that remove? You have armor pieces like this, right? You can then use these pieces to kind of duplicate onto themselves, do all the process things that, you know, I was doing before, to hopefully come up with something that looks complex, interesting, unique, right, designed well. But we can kind of build on that a little bit later. So for now, what I'm going to do, and I might touch on it a little bit later after I get like a decent distance into this. But right now what we have is we're going to be drawing this. We're going to be kind of, you know, painting and creating that process. Hopefully it works out pretty well. I don't really know. And then after that, I'm going to show you how I take things further, right? How do we push these things and understand that the design doesn't stop just because I stopped doing like line drawings and stuff. You know what I mean? So the layout right now is I have my silhouette layer, right? Just the base shape that I made, and I'm cleaning things up and changing it, right? I separate out the arm because that's what I don't really need the arm to be part of that main torso, and I want that clarity in that armor piece. And then I have some like just occlusion shadows, darker sides, darker passes on a separate layer as well. And then we'll get into like actually doing like highlights and stuff, and, you know, doing all the fun, cool business of like, you know, creating nice like highlights that go like straight down the arm. You know what I mean? Creating nice, stronger effects, but we're not quite there yet. So cool. All right, let's get into this. Something that I like to do, especially in this earlier phase, is like There's really only a couple, like whenever you're doing designs, I think there's this, I don't know, like it's scary to kind of get started. You know what I mean? Like there's so much to do in terms of like actually making this drawing or painting or whatever, right? Look okay, right? And so like I think a big thing that I try to remember as I'm doing all this is, just understand that the thing that you're designing right now, start with the big pieces, right? Like this, for example, I started with the arm because that's like the first thing you see. That's the first layer. And then I started kind of getting like these deeper shadows, right? Just getting these masses blocked out, because once you do that, it gets way easier, right? There's something about like once you kind of see the major forms, it works out pretty well, because after that, all like the inside filigree and all the cool stuff, all the fun details, right? That stuff, it can almost be anything. You know what I mean? It can like you can kind of just let it be, essentially. There's a lot that you can just kind of make up on the fly, but as long as you get those kind of like big shapes down, you're most likely going to be in a pretty good spot. So, but let's see. Let's get this. Hopefully, by the end of this, I kind of want to focus on just a couple parts, right? I'm probably gonna focus mostly on the armor guy today, because I did do a lot of emphasis on, like, I guess the lizard dragon flaming thing last week, right? Really getting that silhouette down. Now I want to kind of show, like, the fruits of actually doing that study, right? Because I think we skip that so often, especially like when you're in a hurry. I'm guilty of this as well. Like whenever I'm in a hurry, I'm like, I can't do that right now. I just gotta get this painting out. You know what I mean? And there's this, I don't know, there's this idea where, like, because you're not painting on the thing that you're supposed to be painting, you're, I guess, wasting time, right? But in reality, I think that speed that you get from actually, taking the time to figure something out really does go a long way, and it'll really get you to where you're going pretty quick. Like, you speed up so much more because of it. You know what I mean? Like, you just move faster. Boom. Let's see here. I'm trying to like replicate some of this like other side armor, which I hate. I hate doing this part. Let's see, something like that. Is that right? Yeah, that's fine. All right. How's life, Discord? How are the things going? How's your art journey? Great, splendid, I see.
Not too bad. Just busy.
Nice, that's good. What's for everybody?
Unity a lot.
Unity, nice. How's that been?
Kind of fun. I don't have to do any like technical stuff, so I just get to like plug and play, I guess. Copy, it's been cool.
Yeah, actually, that's a good thing. I had a job where I had to work in, I think it was Unity, but how was that for you, right? Or how is that for you? Obviously, we're online, so you don't have to talk about anything like NDA, but like as an artist, right? And for everybody, right? You're going to be told to jump into these programs, right? Because they're like, oh yeah, we work with Unity, right? We work with Unreal, we work with whatever. Can you use it, right? And like, what's that been like for you as somebody that, I'm assuming you went into it without that knowledge, correct?
Yeah, zero.
Yeah.
Zero experience. Never even downloaded it.
And what's the expectation?
I don't know. Like, I guess like we have learned a lot about how to like operate within that UI and like that program, but like as far as like what I know the people who are actually like building things in games in Unity, like that seems so much more complicated. So I, not more than a week or like a week and a half of like studying it and trying to mess around with it to kind of get enough skills to be able to do what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, right. I think that's the key metric there, right? I think something that I wanted to talk about or wanted to kind of touch upon was like the idea that when you see that listing on the job for everybody, right? When it's like, hey, we use Unity, right? Do you know Unity? It's like, oh, I don't know Unity. I don't, because we're thinking of it like, oh, like Photoshop, right? Like not thinking of Unity as Photoshop, but you know it like you know Photoshop. Like Photoshop, I know in and out. I can like blindfold my way through it pretty easily, right? Like I know where everything's at, and I can explain to someone how to walk through each step and be relatively good at it, right? But with like other programs, I wouldn't be able to do that. Even with Blender, I'm not able to do that. And so when people ask us like, oh, do you know these programs or are you able to do it? I think there's this fear of like, oh, I don't really know it and I can't learn it in time, right? And a lot of the things that, like for me, for example, whenever I was working with Unity, I think it was Unity, all they asked me to do was just take the assets that the modeling team made and then just import it, and then just organize it. Even then, half the time, because we had a live level that we were kind of working on, they would import it for me, and then they would just say, just grab it and move it somewhere. Just put it where you think it should go, and then we can kind of like plan from there, right? Because I'm the concept artist, so they need the ideas from me, and they're building the assets. And it took me, I don't know, like 2 days to figure out how to navigate just enough to where I could kind of do that. You know what I mean? So like, I think for everybody, right, really understand, especially for those of you that are like have what would you call that? Like program anxiety? You know what I mean? Like when it's like, oh, I have to learn like 50 different things. I mean, there's things that you got to learn, right? Yeah, some Blender stuff you probably need to figure out a little more than others. But there are some like specialty cases where they'll want you to do like some sort of program that maybe you're not really used to doing or seeing or whatever. I just understand, like, you don't have to be a master at it. You just have to do what they need you to do, right? And usually it's like, oh yeah, just import some stuff and arrange things, or at least know how to handle a file at the very least, right? Save things out, add things in or whatever, because that's all they're expecting, really. I mean, it changes, right? It's different each time, but at the end of the day, it's most places know that you are the artist, you are the designer coming into the project, and somebody else's job is to kind of handle all the like the technical stuff. You know what I mean? I think when I first heard it, I was like, dude, I don't know if I could do this, man. Like, they're about to find out I'm a fraud. I can't, and then they're like, oh yeah, just take this asset and move it. And like, even the modeler just showed me real quick. He was like, oh yeah, just do this. I was like, sweet, easy, right? So, but it sounds so scary. At least for me. I don't know. Maybe I'm just weak. Maybe I'm just like just a pansy. Who knows? But a lot of it really was like, just do this one quick thing, Let's see. Boom. Let's see. What are people saying in the chat? Nice. Working on college assignments, Darren. I dig it. College. What college are you going to? Are you back home, right? Back in your place of stay, residency? To forget this. Wait, what? Well, push comes to shove, I'm going to look up a tutorial to forget days later. What does that mean? I don't know what you're trying to tell me, man. I don't get it. Boom. Let's see. Oh, that's kind of cool. I was thinking, like, when I saw this, I was like, oh, what if this is like a fantasy, like Ghost Rider kind of guy? You know what I mean? He has his like ghost dinosaur, and he's like just a set of armor that kind of rides around. slinging out justice, you know. But I don't know. The idea is evolving as we go. I have no idea where this is gonna go right now. It's a lot of like we're just kind of messing around. We're just seeing like what happens. What's the what kind of like shapes and stuff we can make to at least get a good start, right? I think that's the biggest thing. It's getting that initial start of, oh, that's kind of cool, right? Like I said before, like I always say, right? It's that phrase right there, like whenever you start, it's so powerful. Like it sounds so funny. It's like it's just such a simple idea, but I think like we just forget so much that it's like, do you even like this? You know what I mean? Do you even enjoy what you're doing? If you don't, it's usually like a good time to stop, a good time to just reframe like whatever it is that you're doing and be like, okay, well, what do I like? You know, what is something interesting about this, or something interesting that I can include into my designs? You know what I mean? I was I've been playing some old games lately because I finally have a life again. That's a whole separate thing, but I kind of finished all my Lightbox stuff, and I'm like prepped for, you know, everything I need to do. And so I've been like playing more games, and I was playing Pokemon Violet recently, just because I haven't played that one yet. And I was playing with Sarah Ledge. She uses this armor. I don't even know, like there's like, I don't know, there's like debates whether it's like an actual Pokemon or not, right? Because, you know, it looks like the way it does. It doesn't like feel like a traditional Pokemon, but I'm like, it still looks pretty cool though. And I was just kind of referencing some of that design for like this armor, because I was like, oh, that'd be kind of cool. But like when we're designing, right, I think like something so important, because I didn't plan on this, was like I was really heavily inspired by Jun An's painting. He had, I can't show this on Discord. I guess I'll just bring it in Photoshop. But Jun An. So like when I think like fantasy stuff, I always think of Jun stuff. I know he does a lot of sci-fi, but whenever I see it's what he did for League. It's that he's like riding that griffin or whatever, that armored thing. Let's see, copy image. Why is this full screened? There we go. There we go. Yeah, this painting right here, dude. When he did this, when he first showed us, I was like, holy shit, dude. You know, it's like it looks so sick, but it's so simple. You know, it's not easy, but it's like it's so simple. And I think when I saw this, I kind of wanted to do something similar, right? Something that's like, you know, something that I don't know, just kind of has that same vibe, right? Obviously, I'm not June, so I can't do what he do, but I just wanted something like kind of in that similar vein. So from here, I just started like, I was going that way, right? I was like, oh, let's do something a little more like, I don't know, I don't say serious, but like more, less magic-y, you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Like it's hard to explain, but it's like a lot less of the, I guess, super designed out, stylized kind of stuff. And then I was like, you know what? That's not really what I do though. You know, that's not the way I roll, right? That's not what I'm kind of about, right? And so whenever I started actually designing pieces of this, I was like, oh, let me just start adding shapes. That fire thing was kind of cool. And then I was playing a Pokemon game, and then I was like, oh, that's a flaming armor knight thing. I mean, that's literally exactly what I'm doing, you know? And it's little things like that. I think like it sounds, I mean, it's, you know, whatever influences you is what influences you, right? But like at the end of the day, you know, do stuff, go out, like have fun, experience things, right? Because these things leak into your designs in, you know, in the smallest ways, and you never really know what's gonna like come out of it, you know what I'm saying? And it forces you, or it forces your designs into a realm that you would have never thought of if you didn't play that game or do that thing, you know what I mean? Whether this is the coolest design in the world, right? I don't know, probably not, right? But for one, it's a design that I didn't have before. And then two, it's a design that kind of is kind of more about like me, right? Things that I actually like to enjoy versus just seeing somebody doing something cool and then just copying that, right? Because cool is relative, right? Cool is something that really it it's up to you on what's actually cool, right? Yeah, June's insane. June had a when we were in school. I don't know how true this is, right? This is what I've heard this from very very credible sources. Um, but when I was in school, June had a nickname. This is what they were telling us that, but at Riot, June had a nickname, and he was called the best kept secret at Riot, the quote unquote best kept secret at Riot, because he was such a amazingly good artist. Like Jesus. But now I guess he's not a secret anymore, right? I guess he's June motherfucking on. So, you know.
Something you said just a little bit ago, I thought was kind of interesting, because I think we sort of design ideas in a similar way, like a lot of like shape focus and doing kind of like chaotic, trying to find happy accidents.
Mm-hmm.
I find it difficult sometimes to uh, design, or maybe it's the wrong way to design, like more realistic stuff, because I feel like that method kind of leads to more fun, stylized shapes, and then you're stuck with something like, oh, this is supposed to just be like a normal radio, and I made it all crazy.
Yeah. I guess like how do you go about that? Like, or what are some of the thought process behind it? Right? Is that the idea?
Yeah, I guess we're just pointing out what you said. Thought it was interesting. If you had any other thoughts on it.
Oh yeah. So I think for me there's like, and this is probably issues that I need to work through as well. Like just problems in my skill set, right? Is there is whenever you're a designer, right? This is something that we did a lot whenever I first started working, just because of the nature of like where I was working, where we did a lot of just a variety of projects. You know what I mean? From like hyper stylized to photo real, and we would bounce between projects. Especially me, where I was bouncing between even daily, I was bouncing between projects, right? And so the processes that I used kind of helped dictate like what I was, I guess, creating at that time, right? So like if I needed something more stylized, right, understand like my tendency is to create something just a little bit more stylized, right? Just my natural kind of approach to just drawing and painting. Everybody has the way they like doing things, right? If you just like zero reference, just draw, right? Just draw, paint, whatever. That's kind of like where I just kind of just the way I roll, right? And so with that understanding, I then was like, okay, well, if I have a natural tendency to be stylized, then during the stylized processes, maybe I'm a little less strict about what I'm using, right? Because like if I just let myself kind of flow out, essentially, right? That sounds weird, but if I just let myself just kind of go, right, then more often than not, it's probably going to be stylized. And it's obviously I'm designing the idea to fit whatever design I need to put, but it gets there. But then when I do photoreal stuff, I set it up to where I give the audience pieces that are 100% real. I'll cut it from photos. Like if it's like for example, whenever I'm creating like the roof shapes, right? Like we talked like with the sci-fi carrier thing, I think was it August? Yeah, it was August. I grabbed those roof shapes, and those are real. Those are actual assets, and I scaled it to the right-ish thing, right? There's always that little bit of tendency for me to be off, right? Because my eye's not perfect, but I'm a lot closer because now I have scale to kind of reference. I have something that's in there that's like, oh, that's pretty close. We can kind of roll with that, right? And it's a lot of that. It's understanding that when I'm creating my own silhouettes, right, it's probably going to be a little bit pushed just because that's how I normally make things. But if I start making silhouettes out of photo pieces, right, the base structure is already there for me to kind of operate from. And really, I think for me, when I'm painting like that, a lot of the details that I use are from photos, right? It's all photo bashed assets to kind of get me started, and then I just kind of like clean up, like I stitch between things, right? And I make sure that like whenever I go, that's weird. Whenever I go from, I guess piece to piece when I'm painting, right? I'm mostly stitching and then letting the photos kind of shine, right? I think that's what helped me the most. Everybody's gonna be a little bit different because everybody paints a little bit differently. But I think for me, that's one of the better things that I was kind of, I guess, that I kind of figured out for myself, where if I allow the photos to guide me, I can get something more photoreal. If I allow myself to guide the photos, I can get something a little more stylized, and I'm just controlling that metric, right? It's not going to work for everybody. More often than not, it's be a better artist and don't be so restricted, not to you, but just to me, really. It's don't be restricted to like how you draw and paint, because I don't let it like dictate what I'm doing. But there is tendencies, right? Just because of like my, I guess, inability to do certain things. So, but yeah, it's weird. For everybody too, like, I haven't talked about this in a long time. I used to talk about it a lot, but like, really getting used to doing other styles is huge, right? Getting the ability to just like, draw something more realistic, right? Or getting something to look a little bit more natural, something, like that. And then being able to find out what parameters you need, right? Where it's like, okay, well, because stylization, right, is on a spectrum, right? There's like, super like Cuphead looking stylization, right? Old Disney style, right? And then there's like League of Legends, right? Where it's like, there is a stylization to it. There are some realistic pieces. There's some pushed elements, and you have to like find out what that rule set is. I used to teach a style and mood class where we would kind of like break down what some of those distinctions were, right? What pieces you can use to kind of help understand like where that stylization happens. Because even something like, I guess more Alberto Mielgo things, but also Spider-Verse. Spider-Verse kind of pushes that a bit further. But like, Alberto Mielgo stuff, it's like the colors, the proportions, and everything are very, very almost photoreal. But then he pushes the fidelity, where it's like the rendering is kind of shapely. The indications are like more, more stylized. But then when you zoom out, it looks, color choices and everything looks very photoreal, right? And that's a stylization. It's a rule set, and finding how to control those rule sets, that's key, right? Because I don't want to call anybody out, but like, when you do like a kit bash or like 3D, right? Yeah, there's some cool things that happen, right? Because you're making some sick art, and everything looks cool. But at the end of the day, if you can't control what's being output, right, you're kind of lacking one of the core skills of actually being a strong, versatile concept artist, right? Because there's going to be times where they're like, hey, we're doing something photoreal right now, and then the client walks in, or a new game comes out where they're like, hey, we want something that's a little more stylized. We want to push that envelope just that little bit more, and you have to be able to kind of do that, or else, I mean, that's your job, right? That's you not being employed, essentially, and it's hard, right? But that's the kind of like, that's the skills you're looking for, you know what I mean? There's a lot of noise today. My God, my part of Japan is loud as hell. And as everybody can tell, like, I'm kind of bouncing around. I'm like making some like shape design choices, right? I'm doing some things. I need to like probably put a face on there or something, but I'm like pushing some design things, and I'm like fixing some shapes, and I'm kind of going back and forth, because as you design, right, as you make shapes, understand, right, you're doing you're figuring out form languages, right? And that's kind of what I'm doing here. It's a lot of like figuring out like what shapes actually work on this, right? And then going back to fix other shapes and change things around and adjust. Like I've, adjusted the collar a couple times to make that feel like it actually sits. And I'm not like drawing, right? I'm not like physically drawing shapes out, but in my mind I am, right? I'm thinking things through. I'm figuring out forms. I'm understanding what the what the planes are doing, right? So for those of you that like, if you're, let's say you're more of a painter or something like that, right? Definitely consider like getting better at drawing. Or for those of you that are good at drawing, understand that you don't have to always draw. You're still using the same logic, but now you're just applying that through like paint and shapes, right? I'm not really painting with lines so much. There's a couple times where I have like line stuff, but a lot of it really is like these big blockouts of shadow that kind of give us that illusion of form, And it's gonna make it easier for me to paint once I kind of get there. Boom. That's cool. I kind of dig that. Let's see how this goes. It looks like I don't know if I like this anymore. The face mask thing that I have, it kind of reminds me of that dude from My Hero, the president, Ida, where he has that helmet. I don't know if I like that. We'll see. We'll make the adjustments. I do like a blank mask like that. That's cool. That's kind of sick. Let's see, what is it? The solo leveling guy? What's his name? Egris? Yeah. That's that guy. Anyway, we'll figure that out. Yo, what's up? There's a lot of people in the Discord. Nice. There are some things that I did want to talk about. If there's anybody that has anything they want to talk about first, we can definitely talk about that. But we are getting to the point to where we can move on to some of the topics that I had. If there's any statements, concerns. Let's see. Boom.
Yeah, I got something.
What's up, dude?
Man, I don't even know how to like put this, but did you ever have like a point in your work? Because everybody finishes. It's like the whole artist roller coaster of like, this is gonna be the best. This is gonna be badass. This is gonna be the best thing ever. And then you're like in the trough of disillusionment, and then you come up at the end, and you're like, maybe not as cool as I thought it was gonna be, but it's so. Did you ever was there a clear point in your work where, and this is assuming you hated your work for a while, right? Because I feel like that's pretty normal for artists. Was there a time when you kind of broke out of that where you're like, okay, yeah, I want to keep pushing stuff, but like, I'm satisfied at least? And like, what was that turning point like for you? Was there anything that like was a catalyst for that?
I guess the what's happening is that you're doing work that maybe not now or specifically, but just the problem of you're doing work and you're very unsatisfied by it. But how did I push through that feeling? Because when you're unsatisfied by it, you never really want to finish it or / post it. Is that the idea?
Sorry, yeah. Or like, I mean, it's that, but it's also like, I mean, it's always awesome to get like kudos for stuff. But how do you know when something you make is like actually good, right? Like, how do you, I mean, I use reference for like other people's work all the time as like a quality bar, but I feel like at the end of the day, there's still kind of the zone where I'm like, is it really there? Is it not? And it's kind of hard to figure that out.
Yeah, I mean, that's tough. I think that's the challenge, right? That's the battle that we're always facing. It's, how do we know when something's actually good? And to be honest, I don't know that answer myself, because just to be real with everybody here, like half the stuff that I do, like I hate it by the end of the month of the stream. You know what I mean? Like within the 1 month that we do it. Like there's sometimes where I'm like, oh, that worked out okay. You know what I mean? But then there's times where I'm like, this really wasn't that good, right? Understand that, this stream is about the concepts, right? Not the these concepts, the talks, right? The understanding of like the how to do things rather than the output of what I'm doing, right? Hopefully the output of what I'm doing looks okay by the end of it. That's like, that's the goal. But I'm more interested in breaking something down, and hopefully some, like, people here like watching kind of get something out of it, right? Get like can take that process regardless of how this painting turns out. So that's that. But anyway, back to what you're saying. I think like so whenever I was kind of first working, right, there is this, I don't know, like this feeling that was kind of eating at me, where it's like, oh, the stuff that I'm doing really wasn't that good, right? Whatever metric you use to define that, right? Like the social media metric of like, oh yeah, I'm not really getting that many likes on this thing, so it must not be that good, which I definitely will say is not a good metric, right? Likes on Instagram, likes on whatever, or the front page-ness of ArtStation, right, isn't a parameter to go by. So everybody understand that. Hopefully we do, right? That's what that is. But what I will say though is, I think you want to pay attention to, like, for one, who's responding to your work, right? If you get, there's always like people that are friendly and stuff like that, but then you get somebody that's like, oh, this person liked it, this person kind of said something about it or whatever, you know what I mean? Or it's because there's like support where it's like, whatever you do, right, I'll give you a thumbs up, right, or I'll give you a. But then, like, when it was like mentioned, like, oh yeah, this painting, like, you'd be talking to somebody like, yeah, when you did this one, it was really cool, when it gets brought up a couple times, right? Because my shitty paintings don't get brought up in conversations, right? But there's ones where, like, you'll be talking to somebody, oh, like, yeah, I kind of like this one. I really like this work of yours, and and you pay attention to those numbers, right? I think like that's kind of how I guess I gauge what directions I should be going, what directions I'm doing well in, right? I think less so now as of like, I don't like dictate the paintings that I do based off of the reactions anymore, really. I'll do whatever at this point, because I don't, I'm dead inside. So, you know what I mean? It's like, it's whatever. But before, it was like, whenever I would do a good painting, you need to like gauge, like, who's responding to what, because there's things that you like and there's things that people are responding to in your work, and it's not always the same thing, especially for me, where I have such a wide variety of work, that it can be a little bit, weird sometimes, because people could like the stuff that I do for work, and then they might not like my personal work or whatever it is, so on and so forth. So it's like, it's trying to find that gauge, but also like, I guess redoubling back to what you're truly asking, it's like, how do you get past like this, I guess that block of not liking your work? I think for me, after a while, I was just like, it's just one painting, man. It doesn't even matter if it's liked or not, to be honest, right? It doesn't actually matter, because you're gonna do another one, right? It does nothing, you know what I mean? It's always gonna be, it's just one painting. It's just the current painting that you're on. It doesn't actually matter if this one's good or bad. Yes, we want to have good paintings. That's the goal. But if it's not good, just archive it. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's just going to be the painting that turns into whatever later. You know what I mean? But it's a mileage game, right? I think for me, it's just do paintings, just be working, right? Just do stuff that interests you, that you find is maybe useful for your portfolio, something that you're interested in, something you're hyped about, whatever it is. Do those things. Understand that you're going to do another, right? It's the same feedback that I kind of have for like, there's this issue that happens a lot where you guys ever get decision paralysis, right? On paintings, because like, I know for me, for a long time, it was like, oh, hey, I want to do a painting. So I'd sit down, I start planning. I was like, oh, I could go with this idea. Oh, I could go with that idea. I can go with this idea. And then you end up don't ever doing a painting. You know what I mean? Like you just don't do it. And the way I kind of get around that whenever as an adult now, or as somebody that I guess has been doing this for a little while, is you're gonna do another one. Just do that next one later. You know what I mean? Like you're gonna get to all of them, right? Your career, your longevity is just gonna be you're just gonna continue doing this. It's this endless cycle of you're gonna do a painting that interests you. And I think once I kind of, I don't want to say like came to terms with it or whatever it was, right? Once you kind of understand that, I don't know, man. It's like, it's freeing. It's hard to explain, but it's because then you're like, oh, who gives a shit if this painting turns out bad? As long as I learn something, you know what I mean? As long as you're like, that kind of worked out, let me apply that to the next. Because at a studio, right, or anywhere really, when you do your work, right, you just get better, regardless of how good or bad some paintings turn out or whatever. It's always just gonna be like you're just moving on to the next one, and then whatever you learned in that previous one makes your next one better. The next painting for me is always better, right? Generally speaking. And it's just like I'm happy with just making whatever at the time, and then if I'm unhappy with it later, that's fine. Depending on my level of unhappiness, that's where I'll kind of like make changes or whatever. But overall, it's just like you'll make another. You know what I mean? It's not a big deal. I don't know. Does that answer? It's like, to be honest, like I hate half the stuff that I do. That's shit, more than half, to be honest.
No, totally. I mean that makes sense. And I know it's also kind of like, yo, here's like this totally out of the blue, impossible question with no definite answer, but it's cool.
Yeah, it's I think for everybody, right? I think what creates longevity in this field, because I know there's like I'm not like calling anybody out or anything like that, but like when people like kind of get too attached to that one drawing, I think art students do this a lot, where they have this one drawing or painting that they're super proud of, and you see it in their portfolio like forever. You know what I mean? It's like, if you're not updating this work every 2 years, right? If you still have work that's like, as a student, let's make that clear, professionals have work from like 10 years ago, but as a student, if you're kind of like not past what you were like 3 years ago, it's like, maybe you want to progress a little faster. Maybe you want to change some things up, because that's usually, something that's usually a bad sign, right? Not a terrible sign, but it's like, that means your eye hasn't progressed past that in the last 3 years, essentially. You know what I mean? And so just be okay with just making better work. And like I said, I think it was August, right? The sci-fi ship one that I did. That was an old painting that I did like 2 years ago, I think 2-3 years ago. And you can go back and fix things. You know what I mean? You can go back and make it better. You can upgrade it, right? Every painting that you do from here on out, right, is one paint over away from being your next best painting. Just, whatever it is. So like, pick any one of my paintings that I've ever done, right? I could probably take that and make the next best painting I have, the next thing that I'm proud of for the next 2 months. You know what I mean? Whatever it is. You're always so close to making something new. So, I think it's like, just do more, right? That's all it ever is. But I don't know. Who knows? Maybe that's why I'm mediocre. Maybe that's why I'm aggressively average. Finn says, for a lot of the pictures I make, I'm happy with. I'll look back on them a year later and think they're crap. For me, at least good is relative. Hopefully that means I'm getting better. Yeah, it it definitely means you're getting better, right? It's something that your eyes are getting better, your tastes are getting better, right? There's art that whenever I started learning, right, was really cool to me, right? I really enjoyed it. And now I'm like, oh yeah, I could probably either one, do better, or two, I see better now, right? So I'm able to like kind of understand how good or bad something is just a little bit more, right? I mean, good or bad is relative, right? But it's like I'm able to kind of, understand that art just that little bit more, right? And so for everybody, right, it's just it's a learning journey, right? It's just like there's things that super impress you in the beginning, and then there's things that really don't move the needle for you later. My archive in my, like, especially like my Instagram, for example, it's full of stuff that like I was cool with at the time, and then I just got rid of it because I was like, I don't think that's a good representation of what I am now. You know what I mean? But that's, every artist is gonna kind of go through that. Alex says, I'm growing to stop planning. Every painting I'm mostly happy with is one I didn't plan. Rely on instinct and your first intuition. Taste is good enough. Yeah, dude, that's so big. I think something I see a lot is over planning, right? And I think like, cause I'll like look at paintings sometimes from people, and they'll be like, then I have this like, paragraphs upon paragraphs of a painting. It's like, we just need like a couple sentences. You know what I mean? No, first and foremost, right? Understand, for everybody, no one's gonna read this shit. You know what I mean? Like, it's too long. There's no, like, unless you have a TLDR or a summary or something, right? No one's gonna read this stuff. It's not personal. You wouldn't read it either. You know what I mean? How many people here sit down and read their own paragraphs over and over? Nobody does that. Like, I would write, like, for presentations in my portfolio, like when I was a student, right? I would like type out the thing, like, I have the picture, and then, there's always that call out or whatever next to it, and could be like, oh, this is the whatever, right? And I would do that, and then I was like, I would never even read it again for the presentation, right? It's like, even like spell checking it, my eyes kind of, maybe it's my problems, right? But like, I don't read my own things that much. You know what I mean? Like, and ask yourself, like, when you type these things out, how often do you actually go back and reference it line for line? It's very difficult to do that, and expecting the public to kind of do that is, I would say asking a bit much. And so just understand, like, these paintings, they sit on they have to sit on their own. They have to be work that just is, just silent, right? No one's gonna be there whenever someone sees this painting, right? Especially in a work scenario. You're not part of the meetings half the time for like some of the larger meetings, right? If you're just a concept artist, that's usually the case. Usually it's like, that leg looks dumb, dude. Anyway, like, half the time you're not part of these meetings because you're not high level enough or whatever it is, right? It's not your job to be there. It's your art director, it's your production designer, whoever. And so when they're talking with either their clients or they're talking with whoever, it's they don't you're not really there. So your paintings have to stand on their own. They have to kind of be able to kind of withstand that criticism without a whole wall of text being there. So you got to get used to doing that. It kind of leads into one of the topics I want to talk about, where when you create your like designs, right, people should be able to understand what they're looking at, and I think something that happens a lot is we don't trust the audience. You know what I mean? Like, there's this they won't get it. It's art. You know what I mean? It's like the whole like artist being all like into themselves type of thing, and it's just like, understand that the stuff that we do is for a common audience, right? This is people. This is your siblings. This is your parents. This is your friend, right? That idiot that doesn't know anything about art. This is for him. This is for her. You know what I mean? Just remember that. Whoever you think is dumb that plays that game, it's for that person, right? Because if they don't get it, you failed, not them. right? It's your problem that they don't get it because you didn't spell it out good enough, right? There are some things where it's like maybe maybe the audience could like, read into this a little bit better or whatever, right? But more often than not, understand that you need to make it readable. You need to make it relatable, understandable, whatever it is that you're trying to do. And so for me, whenever I'm designing, right, I'm always trying to say like what am I supposed to see out of this? Like what's the message here? What's the idea? Because if you can get that down, right, if you can understand what that core concept is, a lot of the things that you do is gonna kind of, gonna pass a lot easier. For example, I've never seen a dude riding a giant flaming lizard with a giant flaming helmet and a spear that's like 3 times his size. I've never seen that in my life, right? Not in art, but I've never seen that in person, right? But I know what he's doing. You know what I mean? I've never seen a dude with armor. Here, hold up. Boom, boom, riding like this griffin thing. I know what he's doing. You know why? Because it's just a horseback rider. It's just a soldier. It's just a knight, whatever. We know what knights are. We've seen those, maybe, in person or photos, right? We've seen what those are. We see what a horseback rider is. We know that's a saddle, right? There's a relatability to it. And when you look at it, you're like, oh, I get it. Cool. But whenever you create something and it's like, what is that? You know what I mean? It's usually because you're not like relating it to anything. You're creating an image, you're creating a design that doesn't resonate with your audience in any kind of way, because there's nothing relating it back to our real lives, because the audience is people, is humans, right? And common humans, not artists, but like, actual everyday people. And so when you're designing, you want to create with that in mind, right? Yes, there's a level of originality that we're like looking for, right, when we design, but more often than not, it's for common people, it's for normal people, right? Not common in like a bad way, not like, no, I'm not trying to say like, oh, it's for the plebs, you know what I mean? Nothing like that, but it's like, it's, average people need to look at this and just get it, because if they don't, you fail, not them, you know what I mean? But yeah, going back to like what I was saying with like directors and stuff, the reason why you want to keep things understandable like that is because when they see it for the first time, they're like, oh, I get it. You know what I mean? Oh, that was cool. I understand the function there. I understand what's happening. And then, you can kind of like go from there, but it's a lot of just making sure that your audience like understands the image, right? It's the core concept of dude, soldier, sitting on a creature, right, riding. That's very human, right? That's life. Now I'm just designing the pieces, Let's see. Roddy says, I feel like one of the truest skills of a good designer, if your designs or world building speaks for themselves. I can't count the number of times I've had to explain an idea I was trying to get across and incorrectly thought was obvious in the art itself. We get lost in our own sauce. Yeah, that happens. It's so easy too, because like I think like with us as creatives, right? It's so easy to just forget that like normal people consume these things, and we get like, oh, this is the coolest thing in the world. This thing does this and that, and it's never before seen, right? And it's just like nobody, to be honest, especially in entertainment, right? In like technology, right? Or like in like inventions that improve people's lives. Yeah, things that are never before seen are more I don't know, more like sought after, right? Because we want something new to improve the human experience, right? But when it comes to like entertainment, right? They want something they can understand. You ever talk to your parents and they're like, I don't get it. You know what I mean? They look at this thing, they're like, I don't get it. I don't know. Sure, honey, it looks great. You know what I mean? Like, it's like that very like writing off your amazing design. It's like, oh, it looks so cool. You know, I'm sure it's great. You know, like I'm sure it's great, meaning they didn't give a shit. You know, they don't even understand what the fuck they're looking at. But they're like, they support you because, you know, you're their son, daughter, sibling, whatever, right? That's most people, right? That's not your parents. That's not like a singular experience. That's every single adult, every single person in this world, generally speaking, thinks like that, right? I don't say every single, like a majority of people. They're not trying to sit there and figure out like find out the wildest thing they've ever seen. They're looking for a movie, looking for an experience, right? And so when we design, you just want to keep that in mind. It's not saying that we can't create something that's truly original. It's just understanding that once you get too deep, you can kind of lose people, and when you lose them, that's worse, because now they're not watching the movie anymore. Now they're not playing the game, right? They no longer are interested in your project. They're no longer interested in your painting, because it took too long for them to kind of get it. You know what I mean? How do you overcome the feeling that you're falling behind the people your age? I feel like I'm not progressing as much as I should. Ooh, good question. That was actually one of the topics that I wanted to talk about. You know, I don't know if there's a way to get over it. I think, I think one of the bigger things to understand is that you're exactly where you need to be, right? Just understand that. Just be okay with that, right? You're exactly where you need to be in terms of skill, right? You never really know what, I guess, what things you need to kind of like learn. You know what I'm saying? Like you never really know what things are gonna set you apart from whoever, right? Because we're always looking for that. We're always like looking for that skill, looking for that thing, that whatever that is. You know what I mean? We're always looking for that, and I think as artists, it can be such an unhealthy relationship with art to do stuff like that, right? Because that it forces you to do things that you don't need to do. You know what I mean? Like you're always forced to start adapting to whatever it is that they're doing, right? This person's getting this kind of recognition, so I need to do what they're doing. But then you ended up just looking like either a copy or a follow, like a sheep of like whoever's doing the thing. You know what I mean? Like if you paint like exactly like one person, it's like, no, you're just the bootleg version of that person, right? There is a level of study, there's a level of mimicry that we want to start off with, but after a while it's like, but who are you? You know what I'm saying? What is the thing that you bring to the table? And I think that's what we really want to strive for, right? It's understanding that everybody is where they need to be, right? Everybody has skills that are unique to them. Everybody has a unique eye, but you need to foster that growth. You need to push that and go the direction that you want to go, not following what other people, I guess, or what other people are doing. You know what I mean? Because that's where that comes from, right? You're falling behind, but to what? You know what I mean? There's no race. There's no finish line. This isn't a race. This isn't a competition, right? Because, like, for example, in a race, there's a definite end, right? You run however long or short, right? It gets to that, from start to end, right? Art isn't like that, right? Careers aren't like that. There's some people that, started before me, right? That haven't had that, like, got their jobs after me. But there's also people that started after me that got their jobs before I did, right? It's so, it's so hard to, like, I guess keep yourself to some sort of measure, for one, that doesn't even exist. You know what I mean? Like, there is no, I don't know, like, there's no expectations to be anywhere, right? That's just something that we set on ourselves. And what happens is, because you do that, right? Not you specifically, we as a community. I did that too, right? I'm not saying I'm any better, but because we do that, right? Then we start making decisions that are like bad for our growth, right? Because, you know, for example, the 3D trend has been happening for the last couple of years, right? And then people that were on, I would consider a good path, where they're like drawing, painting, designing, they just abandoned it and they just started like modeling. And then now, you know, a couple years later, you're looking at it and you're like, oh, your designs still suck. You know what I mean? They're still bad. You know, you still don't understand how to actually design. But you can render the hell out of that block. You know what I mean? You can render the hell. You know how to make arrays. You know what I mean? You can UV unwrap that rock so good. You know what I mean? It's like, it doesn't do anything. You know what I mean? And because everybody was doing something, they switched, right? And this is why I was, you know, even like October right now, right? With Inktober, some people are like, oh, I want to do Inktober stuff, right? I'm like, Inktober is great, right? It's cool. You know, if it gets people to do stuff, great. But if that's not what you need, don't do it, you know, because you need to learn how to draw. You need to learn how to paint. You need to learn how to design. Fix those things, right? Address those issues. Move forward, right? Because if you're constantly trying to measure yourself against people that, for one, aren't really paying attention to you first and foremost, right? I don't think anybody's paying attention to anybody else. It's kind of like that idea when you go to the gym, you know. For those that, I mean, not that I'm like the most avid gym goer. I don't. Anyone that knows me, right? But it's something where it's like there's that idea of like, oh, but you know, I don't want people to look at me. You know, when they go to the gym, you know, I'm kind of embarrassed or whatever, right? And it's like nobody's looking at you. They're all looking at themselves first and foremost. And so, you know, when you're, you know, in the middle of your art career, right? Just understand there isn't a time limit. There isn't a speed that you need to go at. Some people start slow and go fast. Some people start fast and slow down. It doesn't, you know, your speed and placement isn't really a factor in most cases, right? With that being said, I do understand the idea that when somebody is, you know, your friend group is kind of going and they find work, right? Maybe a couple of your friends in that group, maybe you're even the last one, right? To you don't have work yet, but your friends do, right? I understand that feeling. I get that. What I would say is just understand that the job industry is so difficult, right? It is one of the hardest things that you will ever do, right? Is just getting a job in the entertainment industry, especially because what we do takes so much skill, right? It takes an insane amount of skill to kind of do what we do, right? So many different things to learn, so many different avenues to kind of go down in terms of like, you know, environment, character, whatever. And then there's your personality. What do you like drawing and painting, right? And then there's the matching of that personality with the project that's available for hire, right? You need to get hired by somebody that's looking for your style. And then, I guess somebody needs to be offering a job that is in the style that you work in, the things that you want to do, right? If you want to work for League of Legends, they have to be hiring at that time, right? Or else it doesn't work, right? And then after that, you have to kind of fight through the hordes of people that apply as well, right? Not only beating qualified people, right? Because that's the ultimate goal, right? It's qualified people kind of going head to head to see who gets the job, right? You know, comparing portfolios, but also being buried under thousands of unqualified portfolios, right? You're number 1,000 in line, right? As they're sorting through the portfolios, and you could be the best portfolio there. But number 500 or whoever, right, was good enough to get hired, and they got hired instead. It's not necessarily a skill game, right? There is skill involved, absolutely, right? There are things that you can do to make things better, you know, to improve your skill set or whatever. But understand that that's not the only thing that's involved here. And holding yourself to this standard of like, oh, my friends are hired, but I'm not. It can be one of the worst things that you can do for your mental health. You know what I mean? It's because now Once you do that, right? Oh, my friend was hired. I should kind of be hired around the same time. It's like you might not be doing the same thing. You might, you know what I mean, or whatever. Like you're just two different people at the end of the day. And then now you're gonna start cutting corners, right? You're gonna start, not you specifically, but for everybody, right? It's like, oh, well, I should be hired. So instead of doing some of the more foundation things that's holding me back currently, I'm going to kind of do some of these more advanced things that I saw that they did to get them hired. And then sometimes you end up kind of like floundering because it's like you're doing these things that you think are going to help, but in reality it kind of makes things worse, right? You're kind of like imploding essentially, right? You're making these decisions that are throwing you off track. You need to be working on design, but you're so tied into doing 3D or so tied into doing AI. So tied to doing whatever, right? That's not really helping your base skill, which is what they're looking for, right? It's a long explanation, probably too wordy, probably too, whatever. But, I think for everybody, just understand, you're where you need to be. Just keep going, right? Just keep pushing the skills that you need. Keep doing projects. I think that's the big thing. It's do things that actually push the imagination, that push you to finish something that's not a study. One of the biggest things I see happen so often is we do these studies where it's like either a photo study, a film study, figure drawing, still lifes, plein air, whatever. And we're like, wow, I painted this thing. I'm so good. You know what I mean? Like, look how good this thing is. I did this master copy, dude. I paint just like Leyendecker, right? Or whatever it is, right? And then it's just like, oh, can you do your own version now? We have this project that's, Leyendecker inspired or something think like Marvel's like What If series, right? It's very Leyendecker inspired, right? And then you have to do your own concepts, and it's like it falls short because he gave you the answers. You know what I mean? He did it for you essentially. He did the painting, he made the decisions, and you just kind of copied it. And it's like it gives you this false illusion that you're actually as good as you are, right? It makes you think that you can do certain things, but if you don't do your own concepts, you'll never find those holes. You'll never find those moments of like, oh, my form language skills are actually pretty bad. I need to fix that. Or oh, my paintings, my rendering skills aren't as good as I thought, right? Because seeing somebody do something, right? Seeing somebody like paint a stroke and copying that stroke, right, is one thing, but making the decision to make that stroke yourself, that's the hard part, right? That's what we need from you, as people hiring. That's what we're looking for, right? I need to see your decision making skills, not your ability to copy somebody else, right? I'm not saying you're doing that, but I think even me, I was, it's a lot of like, oh, I did these master copies. I must be great. I'm doing pretty well, right? Like my paintings look so good. It's like they're all master copies. They're all easy, relatively easy to do things. Sorry, I was kind of wordy again. I'm ranty today, guys. I'm spicy. Darren says, "Don't call me out like that." No, man, you're gonna be a modeler, bro. It's is that like, cause if you're trying to be a concept artist, that's one thing. I'll call you out, but you'd be a modeler. You learn 3D, man. You do your thing. Finn says, I find I'm way happier if I focus on consistently putting one piece together at a time rather than the end goal. Like one piece, like one painting at a time versus like, I guess the ultimate like portfolio together. Is that what you mean? Or
Yeah, I mean just putting things together day by day.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like I have this huge life goal which I want to achieve.
Yeah, I think
I never get there.
That's a great comment. I think like something that I had to like change about my I guess understanding, right? From student Kenny, right, to Kenny now, is when you're a student, everything's goal oriented. Everything's like big goal oriented too. I need to get a job. I need to get this 50-page portfolio, whatever it is, 25, right? Let's do a more realistic number. You know, I need something that is, you know, I need these bigger things, right? But it gets overwhelming. It gets too much, and it can burn you out. You know, it can really hurt your performance. I think, and you know, maybe as a student, it's not the worst thing, right? Understanding what the kind of the big important moves are is, you know, super legit, right? But what I will say is, once you actually start working and you're actually doing things that kind of like, you know, it's kind of pushing you to be like an actual like concept artist or whatever, like you're actually working at this point, right? There needs to be a mindset shift, right? Because now you're working 40 hours for somebody else, so those paintings don't count. They count, but they don't count because you can't show it, right? And so like, understand that you have to just slowly make things, right? You know, after, you know, so many, you know, after working, it's so hard to like actually do work. You know what I mean? Like, I think people really underestimate how difficult a job actually is. Because if you're doing your job well, you should be mentally taxed after every day, right? Not, you know, like, just not like burnt out, but you know, you're like, wow, I really thought through things. I really put my, you know, my brain into this, right? But I think like for the first couple years, it's like, oh, I'm gonna start working. Cool, I'm gonna start freelancing. I'm gonna take these classes. I'm like, no, don't do any of that. Don't do it. Don't. You know, just keep it chill and do one painting at a time, right? One painting, and you know, like what we're doing right here, right? This live stream alone, one painting a month. If you can maintain that, you are gold. You are doing great, right? Because, you know, like I said, like I've said in previous streams, right? It's, you know, you never know when someone's gonna let you go, right? Because the industry is volatile like that, right? There's things go wrong, stock market drops, and then boom, you know, they just let go of a bunch of people or whatever. So you really never know when something's going to happen. So, you know, you can't exactly just stop, right? Because if you get let go and you haven't made anything since you were a student, you are officially a student again. You know what I mean? It's like, it sucks to hear it that way, but I mean, your portfolio doesn't show otherwise. So, you know, but we can't just be like, oh, I'm going to crank, you know, 1,000% and do, you know, 2 or 3 paintings a week, you know, even while doing 40 to 50 hours of work, right? Like work, right? It just can't, you just can't do that, or you're gonna die early. You know what I mean? So what do? It's just chip away at paintings, you know, just do little things to kind of get you to not be just sitting there waiting. You know what I mean? Like, just, and it's like a couple hours here and there. It's little things just to kind of push you to constantly be putting out work, but it doesn't really require as much commitment, right? One painting a month is not hard, right? It's not that difficult to do. We've been doing it, right? I've been like more casually doing it than anything, right? It's really like a lot of relatively, I would say, simple things to kind of do, right? Because we're just doing, you know, just little by little, week by week. We're just planning things as we go. That handle's dumb, dude. Anyway, so it's a lot of just doing chunk by chunk, right? And then after a year, right, we're in October right now, I'm like 20 paintings in. You know, half of them are thumbnails, half of them are color keys. But understand that there's a couple paintings from these live streams, even some of the older live streams, that I've like gotten work from. They were like, hey, we really like this painting that you did. And it'd be like the Windmill Village I did from the live stream in 2022. You know what I mean? Or it'd be like, oh, we really like this thing that you did, right? And it's just like, it didn't take that much effort, right? It was a month of work, or however long. I wasn't doing it month by month at that time, but it was like however long it took. It probably took a couple weeks, right? At least 3 or 4 weeks. And then it was, you know, I didn't stress with it like coming out. I just kind of did it, and you never know what someone's gonna react to, right? Even stuff like I'll do like fan art, or I'll do just random paintings that I just kind of felt at the time, and then I get a response from it, later. They're like, oh, we want something like this. We know it's fan art, but at the end of the day, it's the style we're looking for. I did a Sherlock fan art thing a long time ago, and that was one of the things that got me a job at Sony. Right? They were just like, oh, we really like this thing, and what dude. And the funny part is, it wasn't even the painting that did it. It was like one idea that I had in the painting that made that happen, right? And they were like, "Oh shit, that's cool," and that's how that led. But it was just something I was just watching Sherlock at the time, and I was like, "Oh, that's kind of cool," you know what I mean? And right now, right, I'm playing freaking Pokemon Violet, and I was like, I designed something, Game of Thrones, Pokemon / Junon, and then whatever else is floating around in my head. And I don't know, maybe this will give me a job one day. Who knows? But at the time, but I don't do it because it's gonna get me a job. I do it because I want to do it. You know what I mean? So. Oh, Darren. How did you balance your intuition to just create while also making it readable to the normies? Don't call them normies, man. That's messed up. They're average people. Okay. Anyway, how do you balance your intuition? I think the thing to understand is, most people don't have intuition, right? Not people. Most artists don't have intuition to begin with, right? Because it's something that you learn. It's not something that's just there. So the intuition comes from doing the studies, comes from doing the plein airs, right? When you're in class, when you're doing these things, like for example, like Inktober, plain April, right? Plein air paintings, movie studies, all these things, right? That's building that intuition. That's what that's doing for you, right? I understand how to paint armor now. My intuition to paint armor gets better because I painted armor once, right? Obviously, do it more than once. But the whole idea being, I'm better at it now because I've done a real study, right? You do figure drawing, so whenever you do a figure, you know how that body part will generally work, right? The intuition of like, oh, that kind of goes like that. Even though you don't see it, even though you don't have a reference for it, you kind of know, right? And so the first thing is, like, the intuition comes from real life, right? It comes from, because that's what we're doing. We're mimicking life every time we do something. But then with that same idea, right, readable to a normal person usually means understandable, right? Like they've never, a flaming lizard doesn't exist, but they know what a dinosaur is. They know what a lizard is. They know what a soldier or knight is, and they know what a horse is. You put all those things together, and they'll get it. You know what I mean? They're not like, wow, I've never seen this in my life. This is the coolest thing ever. It's not like that, right? Because it's not that original. It's just, hopefully, and not yet, but hopefully it looks cool. You know what I mean? That's really what we're looking for. It's they understand what it is when they see it, and then they can dive one notch deeper, right? The whole art, triangle essentially, right? The top level is, do they even get what it is, right? Do they understand it even as like a base concept? And then after that, it's, oh, that armor's kind of cool. Oh, that lizard looks pretty cool. You know what I mean? It's like, that's the next level, right? It's the main idea, and they dive down one step deeper, because if they don't get that main idea, they'll move on. It doesn't even matter what the armor looks like if they don't even understand what the hell they're looking at. You know what I'm saying? Cool. All right, let's do this. So I have my armor kind of okay. He's looking fine for now. What we're gonna do, right? Okay. All right, Darren, what are you missing, dog? What are you lacking? What's the pieces that you're missing here? You can just unmute your mic if you have one. You don't have to type. Don't be shy, man. so we dumb it down for them and then turn it up for the people that stare. No. It's not about dumbing things down. It's about creating something that people understand, right? It's like the idea is this concept, right? A writer. That's all it is. Doesn't matter what he's writing. Doesn't matter who the writer is. He's a guy on horseback, right? So when you see this, I get it. I understand the concept, right? That's the core idea, right? When you see anything, you're like, oh, that's a castle. It could be a sci-fi castle. It could be a fantasy castle. It could be Atlantis. Doesn't matter. But the whole core concept is that's a building. I get that. Oh, I know what a castle is. Defensive. It's a place for, it's not about dumbing something down, because that's kind of insulting to your audience, right? It's like, oh, they're dumb, so I'm going to make it dumb. It's not the case, right? The audience is smarter than you think. What you want to think is, how do I make this so normal people understand what it even is? Because once you get into because I think we get so tied into the wrong, I don't know. It's like with artists, we're so into like some of the details that we kind of forget that large picture. It's like you're too zoomed in. Not you, but for anybody, right? You're too zoomed in to the thing, and you're forgetting what it even is, right? Like that's why like a lot of I find a lot of concept art, it's a lot of form language kind of nonsense, right? It's like, it's like, oh wow, look how cool that cut line is, look how cool this function is, and then you look at the whole ship, you're like, what the hell is it even? What does it do? You know what I mean? That's why like when we like for the vehicle design stuff, a lot of the crits that we were talking about during the Livestream Plus was, what does this thing even do? You know what I mean? And can we understand that just by looking at it, right? And once you get that, the form languages work out pretty well, right? It like my crits in form language really aren't that crazy. It's a lot of like, does it look like it does what you say it does, right? Because when you're not there and you're having to and someone needs to understand it, that's where you kind of start figuring out, is this something that people can even understand? Because if I can't, as a designer, if I can't understand it, generally speaking, your parents won't either, your friends won't either, right? Yeah, great question though. That's kind of where a lot of these things, we want to understand where the audience is, right? We want to understand how how people can, I guess, get behind our work, because if they don't if they can't, like, I don't know, like just grasp it at a core level, there's no point in even doing the painting. You know what I mean? I don't say no point, but it's just not useful for anybody. You know what I'm saying? All right. So next, this is the fun quote unquote fun part. What I'm doing here is I'm trying to set up my my colors, my base tones, right? Because if you remember how we did this whenever I started. Whenever I did the studies last week, right, I just kind of set up the layers to be like, okay, there's the occlusion pass or the shadow pass or whatever, and then there's the kind of base like material. Then I can kind of work the material together as a unit, because I want the highlights to follow all the same path or the same general path, and it's gonna be a lot easier to kind of do things that way. So that's what I'm doing now, right? I'm going to kind of start painting, smoothing things out. I can be a little more messy with it, right? Because it's so much easier to kind of navigate this, right? And then I can start kind of doing the kind of finessing / nuance things, right? Like right now I have that kind of main core light just kind of following it as if this was a cylinder, right? Like for everybody, when you're doing armor or when you're doing anything really, it's understanding that this is just a cylinder, right? That, boom, and then you have cylinder, boom, it's just like a macaroni, and then you're just kind of following that, right? And you're finding out where that first highlight is first, right? Understand that main structure, and then from there, right, we're gonna do the nuance thing. This bends a little bit more, this is a little farther back, this has that kind of like arc right there where it's like kind of sharper, it has that apex, right? But start off simple, build from there, right? Makes it a lot easier. So let's see, boom. And like this is kind of where I use my random brushes. Like there's always paintbrush 1. That's the one I always use, right? But I have other ones, and these are like I don't ever really use them except for moments like this where I'm like, oh, I want just a certain effect. I just want something to kind of just be a little bit different, right? I need randomness. I need brush strokes. So this is kind of how I set that up, right? It gives me that chaos that I'm looking for because I want that ability to kind of get some nice strokes in without me having to think about it too much. It's like when you think about like when you're trying to like do like tree line ridges, when you're trying to do when you're trying to force certain ideas to kind of come through, right? It doesn't really look that good, generally speaking. Like at least for me, whenever I'm painting, if I kind of like think about it too much, it ends up looking like strangled, right? So I'm using kind of brushes to help me out with that. That and smudge tool to kind of get me halfway there. And then I can like fix it. You know what I mean? Boom. Let's see. Pop. Something like that. Something like that. There you go. Sick. Let's go. Hopefully this turns out okay. I'm not, I think something that's, it's always weird. Like, I think trying to figure out, like, I'm looking at because I have my study to the left here. I have this study right there. I have my study to the left, and I'm, I guess, trying to recreate some of the ideas, but also, like, try to get that looseness that was there. You know what I mean? Like, I think, like, trying to, it's trying to identify that looseness that you had in the study that's really hard for me to do. I think that's something that I really struggle with. Trying to recreate that in a concept. You know what I mean? Or I guess an illustration in this case. And maybe I'm too zoomed in. Maybe I'm just like too close to it to like get it right. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of cool. Somebody that does armors, paintings like that really well is Keikai. Keikai Kotaki. Let's see. See how many armor things? I think Discord can't see this because you only see my Photoshop window. I'll copy in a second once I get the actual armor idea. Once I get the images. Boom. Let's see. That's cool. This guy's sick, dude. It's funny. I haven't seen his work in a while. I haven't seen it since I was in school. But it's like, it's funny when you see it. You're like, man, I still can't do that. Like 10 years later, you're like, God damn, dude. Here, let's copy this one. Here's a lot of armor here. Boom. Like that's cool, man. Like, and like just looking at it, like, how does he do it? You know, like how does he get this like kind of chalkier kind of brush stroke, but then like all the paneling and stuff, and how the highlights kind of follow really nicely. You know, like when you see this stuff, where it's like that highlight kind of follows that path, that cylinder really well. But then there's so much breakup, you know what I mean? And you have to do that in a certain kind of way. But I think seeing these multiple light sources helps a lot. It kind of creates that more shinier look. That's cool. Let's see. Same with June, right? It's like, how does he do that? And like, I think June is like, I think it looks less about, I guess, that singular piece. Like he does it a little bit here, right? Where it looks like he creates that shape, right? It's that shape there, and then he just kind of paints that shadow side because that matches the whole shape, you know? But then you see like these cut lines on top. I don't even know how he does this shit. Jesus Christ. Oh, yeah, here's a really good example of that, right? Where there is this, when you look at it without the line work, without that black line, right? It's just like the same highlight brush that kind of goes over the top like that, you know? And creating that consistency, dude, so sick. A lot of edges. Let's level up. Let's see what happens. Boom. Something I also wanted to talk about with what we're doing here, right? I think there's a different mindset that I feel that people might not understand when they see this, right? Because I think like, especially with concept art, right? Because the output is so high, right? The level of, concept artists, right, is so high. I feel like it's hard to really understand what the differences are when it comes to illustration versus concept art, right? A big thing that that I find, I don't know, that I see a lot with especially students, right, is that there's not an understanding between the two different mediums or two different like forms of work, right? Because when you do like illustration, right, there's a different mindset we want to get in versus like concept. With concept, I think it's I would say a lot easier. I don't say easier. It's different in some regard, right? Obviously, there's parts where it's like a little bit harder, right? There's the actual concepting phase is difficult, right? But like the illustration, oftentimes is the thing that we see the most, right? Especially when you see concept art, it's like, oh, the painting looks really good, but is the concept good? Is the concept useful for anybody, right? So what I wanted to talk about, right, especially with this, is when we do our illustrations, right, there's a level of appeal that each piece of the painting kind of needs to hit, right? Like, for example, in a concept piece, I could just hand this to a modeler, not like this, but if I were like to finish painting it and painting it in the the same way that I did the vehicle design, right? The vehicle design is one thing. So check this out. Where's my JPEG? There it is. Okay, so this is from for those that don't know, right? But this is from last month. There is a good concept here, but I would not call this the illustration, right? Because when I did this very separately, where it was like, if you remember, for those that were like watching and stuff, for those that weren't watching, I did the whole car gray, and then I cut it up, and then I like colorized, right? And for those that have taken like a class of mine where I talk about color, we know that that's not how we paint color, right? Because color is reactive to its sources, right? If it's a yellow kind of light from the sun, the color is going to shift towards yellow. But in this case, that doesn't do that because I'm colorizing. It's only red throughout the whole thing. It's the same hue of red, same hue of teal, so on and so forth. And so the illustration here is pretty weak because yes, there's some rendering happening. I mean, I could do more or whatever, but overall, like, it's mostly about seeing the shapes, understanding the forms, understanding the design as a whole. When we go to illustration, it's different, right? Because the illustration side, it's really about like trying to make something look appealing, right? Even if you kind of lose details, even at the expense of like, missing a lot of things that we're, trying to show off, you really want to understand that you're trying to make something look appealing, right? The brush strokes need to look good. Every stroke that you put down needs to have a purpose, a reason, an identity to it that feels right? This is where that like the idea of like a juicy paint stroke really comes into play, because that's what makes the illustrations actually look good. You know what I mean? It's that effortlessness that you're looking for, but in a concept that doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like when you see concept art paintings, it's just information for the piece. You know what I'm saying? It's just information for whoever's next in line. But whenever we're doing illustrations like this, understanding that we're trying to get something also appealing, not just I kind of equate it to like when you do clouds, right? Like you can create the shape of the cloud, but it doesn't mean the cloud actually looks good, right? There's a fidelity to it. There's a nuance to it that like, I don't know, really like kind of hits nicely whenever it's done well, right? Because you know people that do clouds well, it's just like, dude, that looks so sick, But it's like trying to get that effortlessness. Like this, I don't know, the way that kind of turned out right there looks kind of nice. The way I kind of carved out that plane with that darker pass. But like this section to the left right here doesn't really look that good. It looks kind of blobby, not that, it doesn't look that great. And then the lines themselves aren't really working that well, right? And so it's like you're playing with the way that you're applying strokes. There's like effortlessness to some of this, right? But then there's like just too much, like, I don't know. It's too much you're kind of beating on it too much. You're kind of like messing with it too much. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. It's hard to explain, but understand what that difference is when you're doing your concepts, when you're doing your illustrations, right? The focus is different. And if you can understand what that focus is about, you can kind of create something a little more on task, right? I think like a big problem, especially for me, whenever I first started working, was I treated everything like an illustration. You know what I mean? Like it's always like, you know, how good can we make this painting look? But in reality, they just need like a turnaround. You know, they need something pretty chill that just is descriptive more than anything. You know what I'm saying? Just the ramblings of a crazy guy. Let's see. Boom. See, it's like, how do I make this shape right here? Like I need this lip to kind of go darker. How do I do that effectively without looking like a scrub?
I think this is something that I've been struggling with recently.
What's up?
I've been doing a lot of daily studies,
Uh-huh.
and I noticed, especially like in the last piece I posted, I'm like, man, I really tend to hide behind detail instead of making like nice, simple shapes, which is kind of like a problem for me because it seems like it would be easier, and I'm sure everybody knows this by now. It's pretty simple, but it's like it's not easy to get those simple shapes. It's like that's why Sargent would go back, stare at it, and go repaint the same thing like 5 times with a single brush stroke, and it's like, duh. But it's so much harder that way than to just be like, no, I'm gonna render it out and make it, you know, work.
Yeah, it's like it feels like overworked, right? And you're trying to just nail that like one stroke that just kind of, that's a terrible example, but like that one stroke that just kind of hits it well, right? And then you can like just walk away really nicely. Yeah, man, it's hard. It's hard getting that simplicity because what you're doing is you're trying. I mean, this is my average artist guess, average boy guess of what's happening, because I'm not good at it either. But it's you're trying to do as much as you can with the fewest amount of strokes, right? You're trying to describe as much information as possible in the least amount of effort, and it looks masterful. You know what I mean? Like when you see Sargent do that one highlight or you do whatever, it's like it takes so much skill and understanding to get that highlight where it needs to be and carve the way it needs to carve. And I think for me, like you keep seeing me Control Z right here, right? Just for anything really, and it's because I'm looking for it, because I'm not good enough to just do it. You know what I mean? I don't know if he's like that either, but like it's like you're just trying to get something that kind of feels right. You know what I mean? That you can kind of like step away from, and it needs to kind of like almost do like double or triple duty, because it's describing form, it's showing value, it's showing color, it's doing all these things, and it almost feels like effortless, you know. But yeah, I'm not good at that. I'm very aggressively average. Yeah, the simple things they're always hard. It's always like the hardest thing to do. Ugh, I hate it. Art sucks. Maybe that should be my next goal. Effortless art.
I see no roadblocks with that. It should be easy, right?
Yeah, there you go. It's easiest thing in the world, right? Easy peasy. Let's see. Boom. And it's like I could have paint this. I could paint it so easily, right? It's like it's so easy to just paint a damn shiny cylinder, right? But it's like making it look good. Oh, dude, that's different. That's something else. That's Mastercraft stuff. That's legend. That's stuff of legends. I
think it's kind of interesting how many you know, like you level up and then you see kind of the next plateau going up the mountain, and you kind of look back and, you know, maybe you've come up a long way up the mountain, but it just feels it's like oh my gosh, there's so much, you know, because it's endless, right?
Yeah.
It feels like there's so much more to go, but like in a good way. I think it's just interesting trying to, like, I try to explain to my non-art friends like how far things can go, you know, when like insert your favorite painter name here, right? It's like you look at their art and you compare that to not bad, but like maybe run-of-the-mill, you know, just functional illustration work that's done really quickly, maybe for like commercial stuff or really quick concept work. And it's like sometimes the difference is like mind-blowing, even if the thing you're comparing it to like isn't bad or anything. It's just there's so many other elements you can go, and it's like even when you just pick one category like color, like there's this whole other world where you can just like push it to an unbelievable amount.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy.
I think, but you know, like with that in mind, right? I think like AI is like that too, right? Where it can, technically speaking, make the highest quality images, right? Because, you know, it is pretty hard to match that quality, at least quickly, right? But it doesn't have that life. You know what I mean? It doesn't have that idea. And anybody that uses 3D knows this, right? Anybody that's good at 3D knows this, where when you create a render or whatever, right? It just doesn't hit like that I don't know, that illustration quality that we're all striving for. This is why you'll see renders with like brush strokes on them. They'll just go in, they'll just like smudge shit around, right? Because that's what they're looking for. But that's the difference, right? It's fake. It's not like, it's not the masterful stuff that you see Craig Mullins do. It's not the juiciness that you see like Jamie Jones do, right? And that's what we're always trying to mimic. And it's skill. It takes so much effort to get that, you know. And it's I think everyone's striving for, whether we talk about it or not, you know. But we're always striving for like, how do we get that, like that effortlessness, you know. I think somebody that has always kind of been an amazing illustrator for me is Campbell White. Like when we were in class, he was like amazing. I mean, he's still amazing now, but like it's like when I saw the work, I was like, how the fuck? Like, what are you doing? Like, I don't even get it. You know, like when you see those artists and you're like, I can't even comprehend what you're doing, right? Like, me now can't comprehend what he was doing then. Not to mention the stuff he's doing now, right? And it's just like, dude, what the hell, man? Like, it really kind of shows how far that like gap is. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's very disheartening, I will say. But it's okay.
Yeah, I think it definitely can be. For me, it's equally inspiring at the same time, you know, just to know that like there is so much room to grow. Like, I think sometimes there's a feeling of like, okay, everything's been like done under the sun, but all it takes is looking at some really good artwork to be like, wow, you know, there really is kind of an infinite field of possibilities.
Yeah.
We have a little corner. It's a good little corner that's been done for sure, but it's kind of mind blowing what's possible out there.
Yeah. No, for sure, man. Oh, missing some messages. Yeah, anime illustrators are in a league of their own with Cutter. Yeah, exactly. You know, I think like that's a big thing that I like to talk about as well for everybody, right? It's like, get out of the concept art bubble. Concept artists suck. You know, like they're good at some things, but they're bad at so much of it. You know what I mean? Like if you're only looking at concept artists, you'll never be as good as the top concept artists. Because the top concept artists are not looking at concept art. They look at other things. They look at everything else except for concept art. Because there's so much more to art. There's so much more to this stuff that we do. And like when you want the best of whatever, right? It's usually not the concept art. Like when we think like figure drawing artists, right? It's not, concept artists aren't the best at all, not even close. You know, like when you think like gesture drawing, when you think like plein air painting, when you think you know, movement, storytelling, whatever, right? Concept artists aren't the best. We're one of the best at design, right? I think designing we're really good at. But that's, you know, that's just part of the equation. And so for everybody here, as you're learning, right? Yeah, start with the concept artist that you know, right? You know, do what you need to do to kind of like, you know, just get you in the same arena. But afterwards, it's like, how do you get out of that? You know what I mean? How do you bring in something else that actually means something? You know, because that's what we're looking for. We're always looking for, you know, what's a cool thing, cool inspiration, cool whatever that can, you know, really take this art to a whole new level. And then more often than not, it's not more concept art. It's usually something else, something that's like outside the realm of what we're used to. Because that's, you know, every time you see something that is groundbreaking, right? Something that's like truly inspiring to see. It's usually just outside of its medium, right? It's usually not the thing. The thing itself isn't that crazy. It's just not in the same medium that you originally saw it in, right? Like even thinking about, like, for example, when you think, like I keep talking Spider-Verse, but you know, Spider-Verse was that movie that did it, where at the time everything was like, you know, going like better water effects, better snow effects, better whatever effect, right? It's like, oh, how real can we get this thing, right? And then all of a sudden Spider-Verse just doesn't do that, and they do comic book stuff. Well, comic book stuff's been doing it for the last 50 years, you know what I mean? 50, 60, 70 years, right? It's like, it's not new, you know? Comic bubbles aren't new. The screen tone dots aren't new. It's just new to us, right? It's just new to the stuff that we do. And they brought that in from a different medium. And that made it like, oh shit, we can do stuff like that, you know? And so like for everybody, right? It's art's the same way. It's like, what can you bring in from other things that makes it different, right? It's not new. It's just a new way to see things. You know what I'm saying? Oops. That's too bright because your voice sucks. Let's see. Hold up. Boom. Darken. Blue. There you go. Is that better? That's not better. Don't do that. Whatever that was, guys, don't. Let's see. Pop. Start up here. Let's see how this goes. Boom. There you go. Get rid of that. Smudge it out. Smudge it out, boy. Your armor looks shiny. That's what I'm talking about. Let's go. I don't know. I'm worried. I'm worried about this illustration. I think something that is going to happen. I'm calling it now. We still have like 2 weeks left, but I'm calling it now, where it's going to feel like this, right? Because this is how I paint. So, you know, and like I said before, right? This is out of my comfort zone. This is something that I'm not really used to doing because I don't do illustrations like this that often. I do like wide shots, wide environments, right? But like for one, creature, and then like kind of character, armor design, really. There's a I'm already feeling it, but if I keep going the way I'm going now, I'm probably gonna run into this wall to where everything feels very separate. You know what I'm saying? But there's like a unity that all of this has. That like if you do characters, if you do people, you'll know this. When the shadows are kind of like blotchy everywhere, right? It doesn't. It feels kind of weird, right? Especially because I'm doing everything separate, especially in the shadow side. I'll say shadow realm. But in the shadow side, it's I'm kind of like doing that, and it's gonna feel maybe too cut out. Maybe I'm zooming in too much. I don't know. I'll have to play with this and see how it goes. But I can already feel it. I can already see the pain whenever I finish painting this dude, and it's like, why does he look so bad? So, anyway. So, with this in mind, right? 1 o'clock. We're basically through. If there's any other questions, I can talk for a little bit longer. But this is kind of what we're going to be doing for this next week, right? Anybody following along, anybody participating, and doing their own illustrations as well, right? This is a 1-for-1 illustration, right? It's this arm right there. Apply it to here with my own design, right? I'm gonna kind of get some of these chainmail stuff and make it cooler, make things better. But overall, like when you do your images, right? The studies are there to help you understand how to break things down, right? Like you're using a photo or an image to help you break things down easier. But when you go do your own paintings, do the same process, right? Do the same kind of level of painting, like simulate that effect, because if you did it here and it looks this way, if you kind of repeat that step and go into the next thing, it's hopefully, it looks better, right? And so for everybody, right, do the studies. If you need to do more studies, right? Because, we did this on a prediction basis, right? Where we were predicting, hopefully, that there was going to be armor and there were some things and I was going to do that. But understand that you're not going to capture everything. I might need to do a fire study, right? Just paint a fire real quick and see how that goes. But do some studies to help you understand where these pieces go, right? The first round was just to kind of show us how we go about it, understanding the pieces how I would approach a study. But just because you're in the middle of a painting doesn't mean you can't do a study. It doesn't mean that you need to stop there and kind of just continue just on your own, essentially, right? You can do a study whenever you want. So when you're painting, just know that I'm gonna take this further. I'm gonna keep rendering things. I might not render every single thing, just so that we can kind of get more rendering out next week and the week after that. But just kind of know, like, I'm just going to continue this step throughout the whole armor, the saddle, the creature, and then the ground plane and the clouds and stuff I'll address. And hopefully it turns out pretty okay. But this is the start of it, right? And you saw how actually long that actually takes to get something that, to be honest, I'm not even sure if I like, right? But it's something that it feels kind of what I'm looking for, right? It has the same, like when you zoom out, it has that same vibe. And I'm starting at my focal point, right? Where I want people to look is where the most detail is going to go. Everything else is going to kind of fall off as we go from there, right? So just know that. Just know where it's going. I'll have an update on this next week just to kind of show you where I go with it before I kind of take it to finish. So, but yeah. If there's any questions, just hit me up. And for those, watching and stuff, there is some questions. Vishal says, how do you take breaks from your art to avoid tunnel vision when in professional environment? I mean, I guess when you're in a professional environment, right, it's really hard to take that break. You know what I mean? Because you're getting paid to do it. So if you're feeling kind of burnt out, I think one of the bigger things is like, slow down. Maybe take a break from doing art at home. Maybe take art from doing like personal work, right? Go out, do things, go have fun, go hang out with friends. You know what I mean? That's one of the bigger things I would recommend. But also, that when you're at work, right, that tunnel vision, usually, hopefully, you have leads / people at work that can help you see those things, right? That's what an art director does. They direct the art, right? And so that tunnel vision, they have the vision. You're just following it. I think there's at work, oftentimes, there's this misconception where we need to come up with every single idea under the sun. It's like, no, you got to do a lot of it for sure. But there's a vision. There's somebody guiding this project. There's somebody helping push this into whatever realm it needs to go to. And so when you're doing your work, you'll have somebody guiding you. You have somebody's vision pushing your skill. You bring the render skill, you bring the design skills, they bring the thought, they bring the prompt. And it's going to help. It helps out a little more. I think it's when you're doing personal work that you get tunnel vision because nobody's guiding you. You don't have that art direction. You know what I'm saying? But it's, take breaks, man. Take it easy. And just understand when you're feeling burnt out, when you're feeling tired, you know, doing art doesn't necessarily mean moving your hands, right? Doesn't mean the actual drawing process, because a lot of it really is like, just go watch a movie, go hang out, go to a park, go take photos, go do whatever. You know what I mean? It's like you can experience art in so many different ways, and it increases your vision, because you know the idea is that you don't paint with your hands, you paint with your eyes, you paint with your mind, right? The hand is just the thing that puts it on the page. And so, you know, same reason why when you see people painting with their left hand, right? It's always like, you know, there's an uncoordination to it. There's a clumsiness, but there's also a strong understanding of proportion, design, you know, and so on and so forth, with their skill that they bring to the table, right? So just understand, you don't have to be doing art to be getting better at art. You know, you can just experience life and you'll be getting better. Obviously, there is practice involved, but, you know, you can take a break and still experience things. And then, you know, as well as think about it, like when you are feeling burnt out, how many times has somebody ever asked you, like, hey, you want to go plein air painting? You want to go figure drawing? And you're like, yeah, sure. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you know, I love figure drawing. And you're like, you start figuring, and you're having fun. You know what I mean? It's so easy to forget that we actually like doing art. And you might be feeling burnt out from doing art. No, you're feeling burnt out usually from thinking, from, you know, from like designing, or maybe one aspect of art. Remember, there's other aspects that you can kind of tap into. If you ever feel guilty of like not doing more work, just figure draw for a second, see what happens. You know, that's usually the kind of break that that you need to kind of get you going again. Not always, but sometimes, right? So. Cool, guys. Well, with that in mind, I'm gonna keep going with this throughout the week. Hopefully, we get something kind of cool. It's looking okay. You know, I don't know exactly how I feel about the fire and on the lizard. He's okay. He could be better, but we'll see how this goes. But yeah, once I get there, I'll let you know how that turns out. So with that in mind, guys, we got one more week, right? In terms of the physical week, so. You know, in 2 weeks, I'm going to be at Lightbox. If you are going to Lightbox, please stop by my table. I'm going to be at table 202, I think. I'll confirm that on my social medias and stuff. But I'm going to be tabling. Please stop by. I'm selling some books and prints and, you know, just overall just talking. I'm just there to communicate with you guys, right? Please stop by my table. But for those watching the live stream, we're not going to be... we're not going to be doing a live stream that week, right? It's not next week. It's the week after that. So next week is going to be week 4, which is the final rendering week. And then we'll have a week break. And then we'll start up again for November. So just keep that in mind. I'll update again next week on like how all that's going to go about. But again, guys, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for seeing episode 3 of my weird Pokemon June on night thing. And yeah, I guess we'll see you next week. Later, guys.
Thanks, Kenny.